Lords and ladies, the great and abominable monster of access journalism has reared its ugly head yet again, perhaps this time in its most pernicious form. And I say this because, surprisingly, some major content creators who are generally fair-minded, even-keeled, and not particularly ideological have not received review copies for Dragon Age The Veilguard. And chief among them is none other than Lord Wolfheart FPS, Lord of the Main, whose hair is the envy of all men, and even some women. And he made a Twitter post, which you can see here, which indicates something very strange going on. Because Wolfheart FPS was flown into San Francisco, by all accounts, to play 6 to 7 hours of Dragon Age The Veilguard, and he left a review of that experience on his YouTube channel, which one could best describe as cautiously critical. Essentially, it was not super positive, and this has led to the current situation and his Twitter post, because essentially what's happened is because BioWare/EA thought that Lord Wolfheart would be a good bet in terms of investing in to give a positive review of the game. So they flew him out, and his impressions were, well, not exactly what they wanted or expected, perhaps better put. And if this were just Lord Wolfheart, fair enough. But as he's intimated in his Twitter posts, there are other content creators that have been excluded from getting review copies. Now, another content creator of very large scale and size, who is not mentioned by Lord Wolfheart, who did not receive a review copy, is none other than Lord Luke Stevens. Now, many of you might know him. He is a young but very prodigious content creator who has reviewed a lot of games, and he's probably best known for creating insanely long videos looking at games. He put out a video on Starfield that was over 8 hours. That's dedication. Very smart guy, clearly, very savvy businessman, and he was flown out to San Francisco as well, and came back with positive impressions of the game. His review of the 6 or 7 hours he played was thoroughly positive. He was hopeful. And despite that, he has not received a review code, which is a bit odd. Because generally speaking, when you think about access journalism, you think of people who are going to be positive and review your games positively. So why was Lord Luke Stevens not a safe bet? Well, you see, the thing about Lord Luke Stevens is that although his initial impressions were positive, he has been known to eviscerate games. He's not afraid to say what he thinks. And if he thinks a game isn't good, he will say that, in gruesome detail, and as I cited before, often in detail of many hours. So essentially, although Lord Stevens initially gave a very positive review of his experience with the 7 hours he played, he's not an overall safe bet. Now, there are a couple things to be said here. This tells us very clearly that what EA/BioWare is trying to do with these review codes is target content creators that are guaranteed 100% to give thoroughly positive reviews. This means that when the review embargo breaks on Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in the US, every review you see that will be put out around that time will be positive to thoroughly positive. No one will be critical. No one. And this includes, unfortunately, such illustrious people as Lord Mortissimal. I guarantee you, for example, that Lord Mortissimal will not be particularly critical. At worst, he will say, it might not be for everyone, but he enjoyed the game. That is my prediction. Now, the very odd thing here is that normally, when a big game comes out, the way early review codes work is that they're typically given to some of the largest content creators out there. Why? Well, it's logical, because they have the most reach, and they're going to promote the game the most in terms of exposure. Another instance of somebody who apparently, I don't know 100%, did not get access to a review code is none other than Fextra Life, who is a very large content creator indeed, over 1 million subscribers. Very well known, obviously, and covers a lot in the RPG genre. So, that's very strange. But, lords and ladies, the plot thickens. As I said, normally, the largest content creators get access to review copies to maximize the exposure of the game. But in the case of Dragon Age The Veilguard, something else happened. Some of the smallest content creators out there got access to the entire build very early. They got access to review codes very early. And although people have been complaining and accusing the naysayers of talking about spoilers and posting spoilers, what you see on YouTube is tiny content creators, even smaller than I am, and I have a tiny channel, who are posting spoilers nonstop of Dragon Age The Veilguard content. And many of these people have also received review codes. Why do you think this is? Well, it's simple deduction here. What's happened here, in addition to the fear of negative reviews, is that BioWare has gone out of their way to give early access and review codes to people that they are ideologically aligned with, people that they see eye to eye with in terms of their politics, as it were. And I hate politics, but that's the way it is. And so you have these content creators that are blips on the map that no one's ever heard of, even smaller than I am, and they received early access, and they have access to early review codes, which they will use to give the game thoroughly positive reviews. So it's a very strange game that's being played right now, at the end of the day. On the one hand, BioWare/EA didn't want to risk certain content creators because they might be too negative or critical. Lord Wolfheart FPS comes to mind, although in terms of content, he is a major party-based RPG guy. Luke Stevens is less so this type, but he's a very big channel, and he puts out very thorough reviews. So this is one of the oddest cases of access journalism to date, in my humble opinion. Because again, normally, you just go with the big guys, and the big guys have particular vested interests to keep things at least mildly positive, and Skill Up is such an example because he's received an access code, it seems, and he will give a review that is mildly positive to very positive, almost guaranteed. But on top of that, there's this weird ideological element that's currently afoot, where you notice that tiny content creators that nobody's ever heard of, really small, we're talking about hundreds of subs, a few thousand, are going to be able to review this game despite having very limited reach and despite essentially existing in an echo chamber. And this is the big question here, lords and ladies. Why give early access and review codes to people who are going to get very little exposure, who are essentially just going to reinforce whatever people already thought, because the people that are going to look at their content are people that already were heavily biased in favor of Dragon Age The Veilguard, thus reinforcing whatever they thought to begin with. In theory, you would want large-scale content creators to put out content, probably positive, you hope so, in terms of reviews that convinces people on the fence that this game is actually good. But that's not really what BioWare/EA has done. And this simply is, at the end of the day, lords and ladies, a reflection of this debacle, and it's the only word I can use, that has ensued ever since the revelation of the very first trailer, the Ocean's 11 trailer everyone's familiar with by now. It's baffling. I've never seen this much controversy surrounding a BioWare game before. It's nothing like, say, the Mass Effect 3 ending, which everyone was sort of unanimously against, thought it was bad. It's so polarizing, so insane. And for the record, people like Lord Stevens and Lord Wolfheart are not political. They're not even toxic. I'm quote-unquote toxic in the eyes of many, although I'm certainly not political. But they're not even toxic. They're just nice, young guys who make videos about video games. And Lord Wolfheart in particular makes videos about RPGs. So you'd think, why has he not received a review copy? Well, we know the reason now. It's a very, very strange practice indeed. Access journalism has been a thing in gaming forever, probably. Although in the last 10 years it's really picked up quite a bit. But this is probably the most bizarre instance of it to date, or maybe even ever. I've never seen anything like this in the gaming world in my nigh 50 winters on Earth. So, there you have it. In any event, thank you for tuning in, as always. And if you like my videos, and you like my takes, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Be much appreciated, helps out the channel a lot. And I'll check you out next time. Take care.